views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good morning. Pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85 of the New York City Charter, a meeting of the Bronx Borough Board will take place on Thursday, November 27th, 2017 at 9:15 a.m. The meeting will take place at 851 Grand Concourse, room 600. We have one item on the agenda which requires a vote. The item is the ULURP application number C180051ZMX, Jerome Avenue Rezoning within the boundaries of Community Districts 4, 5, and 7. I'm going to start off with a presentation excuse me, by Carol Samow from the New York City Department of City Planning. Good morning, Carol, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Samow, and I'm Director of the Bronx Borough Office of the Department of City Planning. There's a presentation in hard copy. If you don't have a copy, just raise your hand. We'll get you one. I have a brief presentation. This is a quite complex project. Many of you know it deeply, but some of you have never heard anything about it or don't know a lot about the planning process, and I thought this is a perfect audience we should really take a moment to explain what neighborhood studies and neighborhood planning means these days in this administration. On page 2, the Jerome Avenue Neighborhood Plan is multifaceted, and it has goals that range across the neighborhood. And importantly, the community contributed to not only identifying the goals, but selecting which ones were the priorities. The planning process itself worked across many neighborhoods. While the rezoning is focused on Jerome Avenue, there are many neighborhoods affected and the surrounding communities: Morris Heights, University Heights, Mount Hope, Mount Eden, Highbridge, Concourse. So it is a big study area. And the planning itself focused on housing, particularly affordable housing, both the preservation and the creation of additional affordable housing. Community resources, whether that is the health of the community or the schools and neighborhood resources available. And jobs and businesses were core. In particular, the small businesses, entrepreneurs, as well as the auto businesses, and preparing residents for workforce and growing careers. And finally, the physical nature of the community itself. How do we get around the community, access, mobility in the community for everyone, access to parks, access to transit. And then the land use and zoning, which focuses, of course, on the corridor itself and supports the broader vision. And health was an overarching theme that we saw, and it touches on every aspect of the planning process, the community's health. On page 3, it's really talking to the complexity of the project when you look at the number of agencies that were engaged. And this is a particular group that you would appreciate, that we were bringing together all of the agencies in a coordinated way to look at your neighborhood. So bringing their expertise and the tools that are available and thinking about issues together with the community. Housing preservation and development was a key partner, as was workforce development, health, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Department of Transportation, small businesses, parks. So that really speaks to the breadth of the plan itself. On page 4, the planning process has really taken us about 3 years to get to this point, and that includes all of the technical aspects of ULURP. And community boards 4 and 5 really wanted us to come and do this planning work in their communities, and asked us to extend this study area, asked us to look at these particular streets. And we felt like this was they've asked for that for many years, and this was an important opportunity for us to gain consensus around the issues along the corridor, and brought us to the point where we are today. The planning process itself on page 5 is really it builds on itself as we go. It starts where we're listening and learning from one another. We then go into vision and planning together, coming up with recommendations and strategies to address the goals. And then we implement, and that's what we're doing today with the ULURP application. But the process itself, when we start a community planning process, we're committing thousands of hours of professional commitment to communities and to working with communities, to all kinds of meetings and exchanges, whether it's information sharing, open houses. We had a goal-setting exercise where the participants actually voted on what were their priorities, and that's what you see in the plan today. And then we brought those goals to the ground, and that was the visioning session that we had. And that really is leading directly into the zoning. So we're really committing, we had Spanish language events, which was very important in this community in particular, to make sure that we were reaching everyone and giving everyone an opportunity to participate. The plan itself, some of you have seen, it's on page 6, is now available on our webpage and in hard copy. It's the most robust plan that the administration has produced for neighborhood studies so far. It is a living document and includes all of the recommendations and strategies, and it will serve as an advocacy document as we continue to implement the strategies and recommendations over time. The land use actions in support of the vision and the goals on page 7, I'm not going to go through every zoning district, but to just point out that we have a zoning text amendment to create the special Jerome Avenue district that's really designed to provide special bulk regulations, in particular for buildings facing the elevated train. We want to be able to have light and air under the train and have quality buildings around it. To apply the mandatory inclusionary housing program so that we're assured of permanent affordable housing here in the area. We have a zoning map amendment. Again, just to remind you that the planning process was much more broadly, and the zoning changes that are associated with it really focus on the corridor and really, go from 183rd Street down to McClellan with densities in appropriate locations, wide streets, important corridors, and McCombs, Edward L. Grant, Burnside Avenue. And then we have a city map amendment to create a city park, and that's on page 8. So we have here on this important corridor of West 170th Street, it really connects the High Bridge, the beautiful High Bridge, to Jerome Avenue corridor, a very important street in High Bridge itself. There's a city-owned parcel there, and adjacent to that is a mapped but unbuilt street. We are demapping that street and combining it with a city-owned parcel to provide new parkland, and the city has committed $4.6 million to build out that park in this very important corridor. And then elsewhere on the block, on 169th Street, there's another city-owned parcel that we've committed to providing senior housing, affordable senior housing, all on one block, a nice emblem of the plan itself. We've also committed $4 million to renovate Morton Playground in the north at the base of Aqueduct Walk. So those are the kinds of basic early implementation aspects, commitments that we're seeing. On page 9, just to kind of review early implementation to date. Tenant resources has been a very important focus of the administration and of this plan in particular. We've passed the citywide now right to counsel so that individuals facing housing court won't be there alone and facing eviction. We've brought the tenant support unit to the corridor and literally gone knocking on hundreds of doors to identify issues that face tenants, and so that they can get the right resources to them. HPD has conducted code sweeps and identified problem buildings, and they didn't just stop in the building, but they went around the block to kind of understand where are problematic areas. And now they're working to remedy those buildings and the issues there. We have a landlord ambassador program that connects property owners, such as those identified in the sweeps, with HPD resources. That's a very important pilot project here with the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition. We have the housing ambassadors. Here is Bronx Pro and MBD, who they work to connect individuals with Housing Connect and prepare for applying for affordable housing, and so that they can stand a better chance in the lottery and apply for it. Housing preservation has been absolutely critical, and it is the most important thing that we can do here to keep people in this neighborhood here for the long term and to keep the neighborhood affordable. HPD, even since the start of this study, has preserved 5,200 apartments. What does that mean? That means, you have an apartment building that may be built with city subsidy. Maybe that loan is coming due, and HPD will work with the property owner to provide another loan to maybe improve units, get a new boiler, new roof, improve the building, and at the same time, having rent restrictions and to affordable levels to the people who live in those units today. So the number one thing that we can do to keep the Bronx and Jerome affordable. 5,200 apartments, more than $800 million of public and private investment to make that happen. And so we extend the affordability for those buildings. And in the past 14 years, we've done 10,000 units for preserve here, for housing preservation. In the physical realm, in addition to the two parks, we've committed to piloting the Under the L program, which is a specially designed street furniture that the Department of Transportation has created. It will include seating, lighting, advertising, signage. We're going to pilot it right here in Jerome for the first time in the city on Burnside Avenue. For jobs and businesses, it's been very important to work with local community-based organizations, and one of the key updates is that Jobs First, which is a citywide organization that works with community-based organizations to create networks, here a workforce network, working across the CBOs. We have some very strong CBOs here, but the network is the missing link, and Jobs First has committed to working with the CBOs along Jerome to create that. This was an ask of the community boards as well as the Jerome Coalition. We think it's a very important win here and requires a lot of leadership from the communities themselves. In addition, we've conducted a commercial district needs assessment with Wedco and Davidson Community Center, already awarding them $1 million to enact on the assessment itself, whether that would be a Shop Local campaign or improving the actual physical streets and facades or organizing the merchants. And we have a business services marketing plan where we will bring business services to the corridor itself. Business owners, those seeking employment, can understand better what is available to them, and they'll be connected to resources right there on the corridor, whether that is a low-cost loan, which will soon be available, or free services to negotiate leases, lease renewals. That will be available on the corridor shortly as well. We have, and then just in conclusion on page 10, implementation continues. ULURP is a part of that. We're pleased to be here at this point today. As a reminder, community boards 4, 5, and 7 voted in favor of the rezoning with conditions, and we look forward to hearing the conversation today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here as well. We will now hear from James Rouse, our Director of Planning, and he's going to give an overview of what has proceeded from our office.
Thank you, Deputy Borough President Green. Before we go into the vote, the Borough President has asked me to read a statement and make some comments regarding the Jerome Avenue rezoning process and the conversations that he has had with the city since this rezoning had been proposed. Encompassing 92 blocks, the special Jerome Avenue district will be one of the most comprehensive zoning map changes ever proposed during the Borough President's tenure. The Borough President appreciates the efforts of the administration, Department of City Planning, and Department of Housing Preservation and Development for the effort they've put into this over the last few years, and especially appreciates the efforts of the impacted council members with us today and their efforts into making sure that this rezoning serves the best interests of their constituents. In this room, a few weeks ago, the Borough President held his hearing, and over 100 people attended, many of which who were opposed to this rezoning and had a number of concerns that where they felt they were concerned about how it would impact the community. Amongst these concerns were affordability, an overwhelming fear that new residential development in this community will result in tenant harassment by owners who want to capitalize on this rezoning. Given the fact that the average median income in this neighborhood is $25,900 annually, there was a fear by the community that the units being constructed here would not be set aside for any of the existing residents. There's also a concern regarding school seats serving this community. At the present moment, there is no firm commitment to school seats and remains a concern within the community. Existing housing, conditions in existing housing where neighborhood residents live. One major issue that was mentioned was the presence of rats in many of these existing apartments. Another issue was the overall repair work and conditions in these apartments and how they are being addressed. Another issue was ADA accessibility at the subways. Between the boundaries of this rezoning, the closest ADA accessible elevators at the 4 and B and D stations are 161st Street south of this rezoning and Fordham Road north of this rezoning. As such, both the Borough President and the council members have been in discussion with the city to gain certain commitments prior to a vote. The rezoning as presented does not satisfy the needs of this community, and as such, in conversations that we've had, both the council members and the Borough President were able to gain some commitments. At the request of Councilmember Gibson, I'll read off some of the capital investments that have been promised by the city based on her advocacy. $4.6 million for the redesign and reconstruction of Corporal Fisher Park, $4 million to rebuild Morton Playground, investing in new streetscapes specifically designed for locations under the 4 train, improved security, new and more efficient street lighting throughout the community, creation of a specific small business service marketing plan to reach businesses on Jerome Avenue by connecting prospective employees with employers, bringing a small business services mobile van to Jerome Avenue for direct access, support community formation of a jobs network which will advise residents of good paying employment and provide access to job training and educational services, bring landlord ambassadors to community districts 4 and 5, and enforce and follow up on code enforcement. There were additional concerns that the Borough President had, even with the commitments that the council member had gained. The hearing a few weeks ago had a big impact on the Borough President, particularly around preservation, particularly around services being provided, and particularly around where the Neighborhood Development Fund monies would go into the community. As such, over the last couple of weeks, the Borough President was able to gain some commitments from the city. They are as follows. The city will launch a certificate of no harassment pilot program that includes community districts 4 and 5 to protect tenants from being harassed from their homes. The city has committed to preserving 1,500 units of affordable housing over a 2-year period in community districts 4 and 5, keeping thousands of residents in affordable homes over the long term. In partnership with our office, HPD will create a Southwest Bronx Housing Task Force to identify buildings of concern. HPD will then create action plans for review and follow-up for these affected buildings. The city has committed to guarantee that at least 10% of units will be set aside for families earning less than 30% of area median income. An additional 10% will be set aside for families earning between 30 and 50% of area median income, and HPD financed new construction developments greater than 45 units. This will assure that neighborhoods will remain truly mixed-income communities that include serving some of our most at-risk residents. Despite ongoing conversation and potential lawsuit, the city will guarantee that half of the units constructed with HPD financing will be reserved for current residents of the local community districts pursuant to HPD marketing guidelines. The city has committed to extending an R8A zone along Featherbed Lane up to McCombs Road that will include the Star Hill campus, which is managed by the Services for the Underserved. The Star Hill campus was the site of the original Calvary Hospital. Services for the Underserved, or SUS, is a citywide supportive housing organization who's had a presence in the Bronx for over 30 years. SUS has committed to providing up to 400 units of affordable, supportive, and family housing at the site, while setting aside 12,000 square feet, or a little more than a quarter acre, of the site for publicly accessible open space. The site will also include a community center and a clinic. The city has also committed $8 to $10 million to rehabilitate and provide access to the southernmost portion of Aqueduct Walk between Burnside and Tremont Avenues. This land has lain fallow for decades and was once accessible as part of Aqueduct Walk. This commitment includes providing access to the stretch via Morton Playground at the southern entrance and reconstructing a pedestrian bridge over Burnside Avenue that would connect the northern part to the existing portion of Aqueduct Walk. This will provide both additional usable parkland within the Morris Heights neighborhood and establish better connections to open space in other neighborhoods via a greenway. Finally, DCP commits to a full discussion at the City Planning Commission on expanding the proposed C8 preservation zones, which would allow for more existing automotive uses within the Jerome Avenue corridor to remain, expand, or relocate to these areas. The Borough President is pleased and appreciative of these commitments that the city has made. The scope of these commitments, to his understanding, is the largest the city has made on a rezoning prior to a Borough President vote. Still, there is much that needs to be done. In addition to these commitments, there are several issues he would like the city to consider and urges that these matters be discussed at the City Planning Commission and City Council. Number one, while the commitment of preserving 1,500 units within the affected community districts over the next 2 years is welcome, he urges the city to consider at least a commitment of 2,000 units. Preservation is the biggest concern of these communities as conditions are poor in many of these buildings, coupled with the fear that major capital improvements will force people out of their homes. HPD must create a comprehensive list of all residential buildings within a half-mile radius of where new zoning is to be established pursuant to this application's approval and assure that they vigorously enforce all applicable housing codes. HPD must assure that all new residential development affordable housing be of adequate size for studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Acknowledging the City of New York has a specific sum of money targeted for these improvements to be made within the special Jerome Avenue district. A minimum amount of what could be committed to this district would be helpful. The current shortage of school seats must be resolved by identifying potential sites for new school buildings that addresses seating capacity. All retail establishments must allow for ample sidewalk lighting and transparency as produced by window displays. Below are the recommendations for the C8 preservation zones. Expansion in these areas must meet an essential nexus of locating these facilities near the Cross Bronx Expressway while still providing neighborhood access. These areas should include east side of Jerome Avenue between Jenny Jerome Playground and East 175th Street, both sides of Jerome Avenue between Gobble Place and the Cross Bronx Expressway, the east side of Inwood Avenue between West 172nd Street and Mount Eden Avenue. In addition to expanding the CA preservation zones, the city must identify alternative Bronx locations for existing automotive facilities that may be displaced, assure that they are adequately funded in terms of their relocation, training, and certification costs to assure that they remain viable. A commitment by the Parks Department and Department of Transportation to realize the following objectives. Capital funding resources allocated for the reconstruction and redesign of EL Grant Highway to include traffic calming measures, including planted medians, additional street trees, and dedicated center bike lanes. Capital money allocated for the redesign and reconstruction of University Avenue malls in similar fashion. Capital funds committed to the full design and build out of Grand Avenue Park, including the DMAP street bed. Department of Transportation and MTA agree on a lighting plan that may require the installation of LED lights along the 4 train. A comprehensive review of all step streets that are taken within the Special Jerome Avenue district. Final 2 points. We request the establishment of a community center that would serve the under-resourced Highbridge neighborhood. And we ask the city advocate with the MTA for a commitment to install ADA-compliant elevators in 4 locations, 2 along the D train and 2 along the 4 train. As such, these are the commitments and comments that the Borough President would like to make, and turns it back over to the Deputy Borough President.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the council members. Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Borough President Aurelia Green, and to all of my colleagues and their representatives who are here, to my colleague, Councilmember Fernando Cabrera, to all of our distinguished members of the community boards, both district managers and board chairs. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here at our Borough Board meeting. I'm honored to serve as the council member of District 16 for the past 4 years, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to continue serving as a council member for my second and final term, 4 years beginning in January. I simply want to say that for the past 3 years of my 4 years in the council, we've been working extremely hard on the Jerome Neighborhood Plan. And we simply wanted to make sure that this neighborhood plan is truly reflective of our values, our principles, and our priorities. We recognize that in this great borough, there are many, many families that are struggling to live, to take care of their families. They are struggling just for the basic necessities that are needed in our city. And simply put, the Jerome Rezoning Neighborhood Plan, while it is a zoning text amendment, there's much more to Jerome than that. And Councilmember Cabrera and I have been working extremely hard for the past 3 years to make sure that commitments are given, as well as recognizing a lot of the challenges that this community faces today, not tomorrow, but today. So I first want to recognize and thank the Department of City Planning. The team assembled of Carol, Michael, and Sean have been incredible. We have met consistently since this plan began, and we will continue to meet even after today. HPD, the Mayor's Office, SBS, Department of Ed, DOT, Parks, and every agency that really has a role in this neighborhood plan has truly been involved. And I am thankful of the commitment of all of the community boards 4, 5, and 7 for their support, but also with their recommendations, because we truly know that this is a proposal that is certainly not in its final stages. Since the 3 years that we began, I certainly want to highlight a number of legislative priorities that the City Council has successfully codified in local law, working very closely with Mayor Bill de Blasio. Right to Counsel, Intro 214, which was landmark and groundbreaking legislation that guarantees families making less than $50,000 are given a free attorney in housing court. Truly important if we are talking about lessening the burden on our shelter system, keeping families in their homes, and bringing stability to so many families that truly need it. Intro 1447 is legislation that we recently passed and codified that relates to construction worker safety. There have been too many construction workers, men and women, predominantly men and women of color, who have been injured and or killed on construction sites in this city, and that is unacceptable. And this legislation will guarantee minimum standards of OSHA training so that we can ensure that every construction worker, whether it's a union site or not, is given sufficient training to protect themselves. We are grateful for the commitment of a certificate of no harassment, and I look forward to working with Councilmember Brad Lander and all of my colleagues in the council to pass that. And certainly a number of commitments that this administration has put forth. And let me say that of all the neighborhood plans that the city has embarked on, East New York and downtown Far Rockaway, as well as East Harlem, there has not been this much commitment before the votes at the city council. And I am grateful for that, because that's a recognition of the challenges that we face today and the investments that we're going to make for families living in our communities today, and not necessarily for the families of tomorrow. And so I am grateful to have worked with Fernando, as well as the borough president, on Corporal Fisher, on Morton Playground. The housing preservation is huge. $800 million, over 4,500 units of housing that is preserved. That is important because we recognize for all of the potential housing that we expect in Jerome, every resident will not have access to every brand new apartment. But we certainly can do our part to enhance the quality of life that families live today. And I think many of us heard that at the borough president's public hearing. Many families are not happy with their living standards today, and it's up to us to make it better for them. And so the commitments that were made prior to the community board's vote, which were outlined by Mr. Rouse, are great. The additional commitments that were recently announced before today is also great. But I certainly want to make sure that some of the remaining and outstanding items that we know we deserve and we need are remaining on the table. And let's be clear and understand that this neighborhood plan is generated for us, for the residents that deserve everything that we are asking for. None of the items on this agenda are we asking for that we do not deserve. None of them are unreasonable, none of them are unpractical, but all of them are necessities that we need to live better. So the number one priority for me, aside from what's already been proposed, are the school seats. We cannot accept more residents and families in this district if we do not address the unfunded seats that we have in School Districts 9, which is about 600, and School District 10, which is 1,800. In this new plan, we are projecting about 2,200 additional seats that are needed on top of the unfunded seats. So that is a must that must be met and addressed. In addition, the Jerome corridor and the incredible diversity of businesses, specifically the auto industry and the automobile drivers of jobs and local hiring, we need to make sure that there is a real tangible plan. We recognize that many of the Jerome businesses are leasing and they're not owners, and it's up to us to build a better system of protections so they can remain in their communities and provide the vital services that are needed. I also want to emphasize the borough president recommended, and I've been talking about a community center in Highbridge since I started in the city council. We will make that happen. In addition, if we are talking about more families and more children, we need to make sure that families are able to travel in our community. We have overcrowding on our buses and our trains today. And if we don't address it today, it is only going to be magnified with more families. So the BX11, the BX13, the BX36, We are asking for increased bus service and certainly ADA compliance along the number 4 and the number D train. We recognize that for all of this work, we do understand that there are state stakeholders that must be involved, and they will be involved. This is not something that we are going to shoulder ourselves when you talk about working with City Transit as well as the MTA. And so with all of that, while I am extremely pleased and grateful at where we are 3 years in, I certainly know that we can and will do a lot more. At the end of this vote, and when this gets to the City Council, we want to make sure that we get even more commitments and more investments for the families that live here today. We welcome new residents, but we certainly know the challenges that our communities are facing today certainly need to be addressed before we face the future residents of tomorrow. And so with that, I look forward to working with all of my colleagues in the City Council, with our speaker, because we do know a lot more is to come. I thank the community boards and all of my colleagues and the Bronx Borough President, and certainly every community advocacy group. The list is too long to name, but certainly many of the organizations that do this work every day have truly been at the table. I do not sit here as the council member taking all of the credit for work that was done by the city, by the community, and by people engaging together. And so I look forward to our continued work. We are not done yet. There is a lot more to come, but I am very pleased at where we are today, and certainly know that we can continue to push and push until we are all satisfied that the Jerome Neighborhood Plan is really a plan for the neighborhood of today and the neighborhood of tomorrow. I thank you all for your time, and I thank you, Madam Deputy Borough President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We will now hear from Councilman Cabrera.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this process. I don't want to be redundant with what was mentioned by my colleague, but I want to thank you for all the hours and time that you have devoted to this plan, and to the administration, to the Borough President, community boards, and certainly our community. My biggest concern as we move forward, let me just say, it's been a long process. We've seen a lot of progress, tremendous amount of progress. I want to thank the administration for that. As it was mentioned, our biggest challenge at this point is capacity. Our capacity to be able to have thousands of people who are going to be now new residents are going to be residing in the Jerome area. I'm happy the administration was open to my idea at the beginning to extend the Jerome rezoning, because they didn't go all the way to 183rd Street, and they were very open to that. In that way, we could have an impact in this rezoning that is going to be a positive impact to more and more people. I'm very pleased to see this commitment from the administration this early on, but we have much more to do, and I'm hopeful, I'm very, very hopeful that we are going to get to the finish line and everyone is going to benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilman. We will now go to vote. I need a motion and a second. Ms. Saunders?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, all, and Deputy Borough President Green. Community Board 4 has been actively engaged in the Jerome Avenue study since September 2014. The board, as well as the community, has worked very closely with DCP and other city agencies in developing a list of goals and priorities that are critical to fulfilling the future vision of these neighborhoods. On October the 24th, 2017, Community Board 4 voted in favor of the Jerome Avenue rezoning with conditions. The vote was 32 in favor, 4 opposed, and 2 abstentions. However, I want to underscore the fact that this approval is conditioned upon the city fulfilling, to the degree feasible, the conditions outlined in our recommendations. It should be noted that while many of these conditions, recommendations, are not directly tied to the proposed land use action, nor will they or can they be codified in the same way as the ULUP process. Excuse me. And these recommendations, conditions are of the utmost priority to the residents of Community District 4. Given the tremendous impact proposed actions will have on the affected neighborhood and the lack of city investment, these areas over the course of many years, investments in schools, transportation infrastructure, job training and skill development and job creations, and the preservation of affordable housing are just a few of the many interventions outlined in the Community Board 4 recommendations. The city has a responsibility to provide these neighborhoods with these tools necessary to accommodate growth and ensure that their long-term sustainability. We are hopeful that the mayor, his administration, council members, and relative city agencies fulfill their obligations to the neighborhood plan to totally and the residents of the Community District 4, 5, and 7. We vote yes with the conditions previously outlined in the recommendation submitted on October the 27th, 2017. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay. Community Board 4 moves to accept the Jerome Avenue project.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders.
I s-
Mr. Cebollero from Community Board 5.
And I second as well.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go for the vote. I will call your names. Ms. Saunders, Community Board 4.
Yes.
Mr. Cebollero, representing Board 5.
Yes.
And Ms. Walker Santiago, representing Community Board 7.
Yes.
I will. That's all right. That's what I was about to do. Councilwoman Gibson?
Permission to briefly explain my vote? I feel like I'm in the city council chambers. I have your permission, Madam Deputy Borough President? I want to once again thank all of my colleagues in government. I want to thank Councilmember Cabrera as well as the administration for their incredible work to date and all of the efforts that have been undertaken to really make sure that this neighborhood plan is reflective of our priorities. I want to thank you, Community Boards 4, Community Board 5, and Community Board 7. We look forward to our continued work. As the council member of District 16, I will be abstaining on today's vote with the commitment and the intention of our future work to make sure that the neighborhood plan is fully a plan that we can all support. So I thank you once again for your time.
Councilman Cabrera?
Abstain.
Okay. The vote is... No, the rest of the council members. I still have to call the others. Oh. Mr. Rodriguez?
No. Just council members. Just council members.
Oh, the council. Council member Melissa Mark Viverito?
Absent.
Council member Andrew Cohen? Council member Andy King?
Councilmember King votes yes in the hopes that the plan addresses the immediate and long-term concerns of the residents. He also hopes that it creates permanent jobs for 32 BJ members and addresses labor concerns in the plan. Thank you.
Councilmember James Vaca? Councilmember Richie Torres? Yes, come.
Councilmember Torres chooses to abstain as well. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Rafael Salamanca?
Councilmember Salamanca votes yes.
Councilmember Annabelle Palmer?
Councilmember Palmer votes yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the yeses have it, it's unanimous. Based, oh, and on behalf of Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr., I vote yes. Based on the items committed by the city, the Borough President votes yes with conditions. The full ULURP will be available online by the end of the day. Thank you. And with that, that concludes today's meeting. I want to thank all of you for coming out today, and we will be having a meeting next month, December 21st. It will be a combined service cabinet and borough board meeting. I look forward to seeing you then. The motion passed with the vote of 8 yes and 3 abstentions. Thank you.
We are Sam Square Thai Cuisine. We're here in Riverdale for 16 years. Very beautiful and nice neighborhood. We do the authentic Thai. We have the lovely customers here, so very wonderful to be here in the Bronx. Because we're here a long time, most of the customers became friends. and we serving them as the family. The most popular ones is pad thai noodles, stir-fried pad thai noodles, shrimp or chicken. In one order, at least we have pad thai noodles. And we have duck, Penang curry, spicy, very fine food. People love it. We have grilled chicken or frank steak. In Thai style, we call tiger fries, which is very tender and tasty that you cannot miss it. And the pineapple fried rice, that's the wonderful dish that people always ask for. With the fried rice that we stir fry with Thai style and then pineapples. And we have somtam salad, which is with the raw green papaya salad and with the lime vinaigrette, which is very healthy, and then that's the one most popular vegetarian dish. On Wednesday, we have free wine night. We have a lot of crowd here on Wednesday. They're having a good time. The decorations here, we make the Thai atmosphere. You could see different colors, they all comes together. And that's what we designed of our restaurant to be like this. We were the first Thai restaurant who opened up in the Bronx. And right now we have a couple of them. And we're still like Thai authentic, which is we make very spicy as you like. And we also have the dish that's non-spicy. And just to give you the picture of where Thai food is right between Indians and Chinese. Very interesting. If you want to try Thai food here in Riverdale, just please come visit us.
Borough was opened in November 18, 2013, and now we'll have 4 years of being the sole owner of My Haven. My Haven is kind of like the Cheers of the Bronx, where I like my customers to feel welcome the moment they walk into the door, and the moment when they leave, I make sure they say hi and bye all the time. Once a month we have comedy night, we have game night, karaoke every Friday. We also have open mic the first Saturday of every month. Outside of that, we also have the back room that they could do private events, catering, meetings, etc. My menu is pretty unique. It's very versatile. You could find anything from burgers, pasta, flatbread, schnitzel, which is just chicken breast with mashed potatoes, and what we call Israeli salad. Our most popular dish in the salad will be the sesame tuna salad. We're very flexible. If there's something there that you want, we'll do our best to make it happen. We have one specific artist. His name is Jeff. He usually does the rotation of the artwork. He is a community resident. He lives across the street, and he comes in almost every day. And he has sold a few pieces by them being here. And so far, he's been my only artist. I would like for everyone to come on out to My Haven Bar and Grill at 1 Bruckner Boulevard and try us out.
Our restaurant is Porto Salvo, and it's named after Safe Harbor. Our executive chef, Luigi Guidetti, is from Terracina, Italy, which is a very kind of seaside port town. He grew up with a lot of seafood-oriented dishes. It very naturally kind of extended into the nautical themes.
As a main focus point, we tried to looking for something, and we were like short of idea. So then a friend of us come, is like, oh, I got an old boat. We pull it up in front of the restaurant, it's upside down. People were, when we were doing the installation, people stopped us like, why you do that? Why the boat is upside down and why it's up there? I said, it's gonna rain a lot tonight. So it's like, so get ready, and that's the story of the boat.
We live in the neighborhood, so I thought people in this neighborhood deserve something that's, made from scratch. The quality of it is good for them and healthy. Luigi is my life partner, and he's also my business partner, and I met him exactly about 5 years ago, and I just fell in love with him. Instead of calling a chef, I would really call him an artist, because what he loved to do is really to play around with the ingredients and then make that combination very unique and very fresh from the background that he had.
Some of the dishes, basically they are typical dishes that we serve in Italy. We try not to change or Americanize the recipe because we want to give to the people the original recipe and the original taste. Basically, we represent a little bit of everything from Italy. We go from the north to the center to the south of Italy. From the north, cauliflower buttered in beer and deep fried with the spicy mayo, typically from the southern Naples, marinated anchovies and dried on the sun, then under oil. It's very nice and tasty. These are typical from the south, bruschetta with fried zucchini, shrimp and mascarpone cheese, and it's very nice, very juicy.
We don't provide TVs and we don't even provide internet access. So this way, you kind of more steered towards talking to the people in front of you or talking to the people next to you when sitting at the bar. And I think that's what people want at the end. We get a lot of thank yous from the neighborhood because we say thank you to them for coming and supporting us, and they say thank you to us for providing a space.
When somebody feels to stop you and give you the thanks for what you're doing, I think it's very good. It makes you feel good. It's like, that's what I want to do. Buon appetito.
There are several things that make the Bronx the Bronx. First of all, it is the only borough of the city of New York that is attached to the mainland. And as a result, of course, that means that the people of the Bronx are the only true Americans in New York City. But the Bronx has many advantages. One of the advantages, of course, are the people. We have people living in the Bronx who's from every single continent on the face of the earth, and they all get along. The Bronx has 14 colleges and universities, which makes the Bronx the borough of universities. It also has 25% of its landmass as parkland, which is the largest percentage of any of the boroughs of the city of New York, and therefore the Bronx is also the borough of parks. The Bronx is the place where two of the founding fathers of this country came from. Lewis Morris, who signed the Declaration of Independence, and Gouverneur Morris, his half-brother, who was one of the principal framers of the Constitution of the United States. And they are both buried in the Bronx at St. Anne's Episcopal Church on St. Anne's Avenue on 140th Street. The Bronx is the place where you have the Bronx Zoo, where the bison was saved from extinction. Just north of it is the New York Botanical Garden, where puffed rice and puffed wheat were created. The Bronx is the place where salsa music flourished in the 1950s and 60s, with a number of nightclubs and performance spaces, and a number of the great salsa musicians came from the Bronx. The Bronx is also the place where hip-hop began in 1973 at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, and of course that has spread throughout the entire world. The Bronx is a place where you have many people who had become major authors. We can go as far back as the 19th century with Edgar Allan Poe, and his home is still in the Bronx and is open to the public. Talking about creative arts, there are many people who are actors who have been given awards both for Broadway and Hollywood. We can go to Anne Bancroft and Tony Curtis and to Red Buttons, and we can also go to other actors who are on their way like S.A. Morales. But we can also take a look at the people who create the screenplays and the plays themselves. For instance, Clifford Odets, one of the major American playwrights, comes from the Bronx. Of course, nobody can really tell you what is going to happen in the future, but I think everything that has happened in the past has laid a good foundation for the future.